Ascent Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Create the Future, Tactics for Disruptive Thinking by Jeremy Gutsche. Forward by Malcolm Gladwell. Narrated by Walter Dixon. You are capable of much more than you think. You are about to experience history's highest rate of change, disruption, and opportunity. This means you are closer than ever to achieving something more. Your breakthrough might be a new product, service, role, idea, or just a different way of doing something. The problem is that your ability to change will keep getting limited by 7 specific traps. Collectively, these traps reduce your innovation potential by 93%, a number I will prove with a simple game. These traps blind you from seeing opportunity and compel you to stick to the path you are already on. This explains why most people miss out on realizing their full potential. It doesn't have to be that way. There are proven methods you can use to break free, to identify opportunity faster, and to make change happen. In this double-sided book, you will learn the same techniques my team has used to advance the world's highest-performing innovators at Disney, Starbucks, American Express, IBM, Adidas, Google, and NASA. This book is more than just my life's work. It is the collective wisdom of my team and several hundred clients who contributed their battle-tested techniques. Instead of writing my third book on a focused, narrow topic, I wanted to make the most useful, comprehensive guidebook I could, combining all of the best tactics I've learned from working with so many innovators. After more than 10,000 innovation projects, which helped leading brands predict and create the future, my team at Trend Hunter has collected a war chest of tactics that will help you win your future. And these skills matter more than ever before because the next 5 to 10 years are about to redefine humanity. Consider this. We already have the technology to read the inner voice in your mind, so imagine controlling your phone with your inner thoughts, writing a report without a keyboard, playing video games without a controller, or walking into stores that already know what you want to buy. Imagine seeing the world in augmented reality and commuting a bit safer, working a bit faster, or exercising in a way that is actually fun. What if we could restore someone's ability to walk, give someone the sense of touch, enhance eyesight, fight disease, or modify DNA? What happens when robots start building our homes, delivering our news, and driving us home? These are not examples of the far future. These are examples of what is possible right now. And with hybridization, instant entrepreneurship, and artificial intelligence, the pace of human progress is about to become not so human at all. Life as we know it is about to change dramatically, and this will create countless new opportunities. Are you willing to make small changes to your daily routine to increase your future potential? To create the future? Let's do this. But first, a little bit of context. There are many great ideas within your grasp. Our world is abundant with more opportunities than ever before. And the good news is you can predict many of those opportunities by learning to better decipher the trends in your world. Artificial intelligence, globalization, genome editing, big data, the cloud, China versus US, 3D printing, boomers versus millennials, sustainability, personalization, social business, influencers, virtual reality, augmented reality, multi-sensation, crowdfunding, group buying, female empowerment, the pursuit of equality, disruptive innovation. You have so much potential well within your grasp. However, as clever as you are, smart people miss out. The average lifespan of a large company has fallen from 75 years in the 1950s to 15 years today. If you look at the list of the Fortune 500 companies from the year 2000, more than 52% are now gone or displaced. And that rate of disruption is accelerating. Ironically, the companies that should be the best at innovation are the same companies that often fail. Fortune 500 brands have all the resources and Harvard MBAs they need to innovate, but somehow that is not what's happening. Although we obsess about innovation, we must be mindful that making change happen is half the battle. Everyone wants innovation and change to happen. Almost every CEO of a major company will tell you that innovation is one of their core capabilities, an astounding 97%, in fact. This suggests that every major company has a strong commitment, support, and innovation capabilities, but our research has uncovered a different reality. But not everyone puts in the effort to make it happen. Roughly half of business leaders don't believe their company has a strong innovation plan. They don't believe they have enough time to work on new ideas, and they generally lack the capabilities to execute those ideas. This is an enormous disconnect, but it explains why so many companies become blindsided, disrupted, or less relevant than they were in the past. 50% don't believe their organization has a strong innovation plan. 55% don't believe their organization adapts quickly enough. 48% don't believe they have enough time to work on new ideas. 56% don't believe their organization knows how to turn ideas into reality. This disconnect explains why you have so much untapped potential. Innovation tactics are desired, but missing. Learn to innovate and experience a new level of success. This book will equip you with battle-tested methods to create the future. After conducting more than 10,000 innovation workshops and custom futurism projects, my team has encountered almost every type of innovation problem. We perfected this framework with our clients to create the ultimate guide, making innovation and change happen. Our habits have changed entirely in the past decade. Driven by media clutter and shrinking attention spans, our world has become headline-obsessed. Because of this, this book is designed to be action-packed, offering 2 ways to learn the content. Consume the content beginning to end. Just listen to each headline. Ideally, you can pick up this book from any section and be good to go. Let's do this. Or join 10 million people watching the keynote videos. My specialty is bringing innovation to life through engaging keynotes and workshops that combine exciting stories with tactical takeaways. If you are a visual learner, check out my YouTube videos. So far, I have added roughly 3 hours of content related to this book. At the time of publication, more than 10 million people will have watched the videos. Watch online at jeremygutsche.com. Join me on Twitter and Instagram at jeremygutsche. Forward by Malcolm Gladwell. Over 20 years ago, not long after I joined the staff of the New Yorker magazine, I met a young woman named Dee Gordon. She lived in Los Angeles, in a sleek, modernist house up in Beechwood Canyon. She drove an immaculate vintage Pontiac Trans Am. She was young and hilarious and brilliant in a completely unexpected way, and she had a job I'd never heard of before. Companies hired her to figure out what was going to happen next. Like many people, I assumed that next was an unsolvable mystery, that anyone who claimed to be in the business of telling the future was deluded or worse. But then I followed Dee around for a while. I listened to the way she thought, and I soon began to realize that there was a real discipline and art to next. There were principles that could guide the way we thought about the future. I ended up writing an article about Dee Gordon and her work called The Cool Hunt. It ran in the New Yorker on March 17, 1997, where, unbeknownst to me, it was read by an enterprising young man named Jeremy Gutsche. Gutsche decided to build an entire infrastructure around Next, a network of correspondents around the world feeding their observations and predictions into a massive consumer insight database. Jeremy is kind enough to say that I inspired him, which is, I'm quite sure, a gross exaggeration. But even gross exaggerations are enormously flattering. So, here I am, 2 decades later, returning the favor by introducing you to one of Jeremy's most ambitious projects to date. You have in your hands a book about how to create the future. Before you start, I'd like to offer a few thoughts about how to think about that question. Let me begin with the question of time. A lot of thinking about the future necessarily revolves around the chronology of future events. We can be pretty certain, for example, that one day science will cure dementia, or the internal combustion engine will be no more, or, in our fanciful moments, that human beings will be able to travel instantaneously through space, like they did in old episodes of Star Trek. The unknown is when those things will happen. 10 years? 30 years? Or has it already been figured out and we just don't know about it? I think that question is best answered in parts. The first part is the technological part. As a general rule, I think we tend to underestimate how quickly and easily innovations happen. If you polled the top military officers and strategists in the world in the mid-1930s and asked them if they could imagine a weapon capable of destroying entire cities, they would have looked at you uncomprehendingly. A bomb, to them, was something that, at best, could destroy a single building. Yet within a decade, they had a weapon of that magnitude at their disposal, and less than a decade later, they had a weapon capable of destroying the entire planet. The nuclear bomb, which has shaped the modern world perhaps more than any other invention, came about in a frenetic, dizzying, awe-inspiring rush. But then again, so did most of the defining innovations of the modern age. Alexander Graham Bell started tinkering with the idea of a telephone in the 1860s. By 1876, he'd figured it out, summoning his assistant in the most famous telephone call ever made. "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." That's one man, over a decade and a half, working out of a farm in southern Ontario, inventing one of the signature devices of the modern age. By the way, as I'm writing this, Google just turned 20, and Facebook just turned 15. The unicorns of Silicon Valley are teenagers. The technological side of the future comes in like a hurricane, but technologies have to be socialized, adopted, understood, accepted, embraced. And what's striking about the social part of the future is how long and winding that part of the process is. The first atomic bomb is dropped on Japan in 1945. When do we figure out how to contain that terrifying technology? You could argue that we still haven't, but it took at least another 40 years to get to the point where the world could breathe easily. Alexander Graham Bell invents the telephone in the 1870s. The first international telephone call is made in 1881. When does the telephone take off in terms of public acceptance? The 1920s. It took 40 years for the public to embrace the telephone. And why? Because it took 40 years for the world to figure out what the telephone was. For the longest time, for example, telephone companies were convinced that it was primarily a business instrument. It was B2B, they thought, not C2C. They actively discouraged what they referred to as trivial uses of the instrument, meaning one person calling another to say hello. They didn't want women using it. It took them years to realize that it might be more useful for farmers, people socially isolated, than city dwellers. Are these isolated examples? Not at all. The first ATM was introduced in the late 60s. But in the 80s, I was still going to the bank to get my money, and I suspect you were too. Did you trust a machine to give you money? Not until you had thought about it, and experimented with it, and slowly changed your routines. One of the strange things about the way social media is discussed is that it is assumed that the patterns and practices around which consumers use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat today are predictive of the way in which we will all use those platforms tomorrow. But why do we think that? These are all technologies in their infancy, and the best evidence of our history with innovation is that the invention of the future and the adoption of the future move on very different timelines. The technological part comes into focus pretty quickly. The social part takes forever to evolve. I have a sense of what Twitter will look like in 5 years, but it is not nearly so straightforward to figure out what Twitter will mean to its users in 5 years. Create the Future is a book about that second, hard part. That's the part we need help with. 30 years ago, a young Canadian psychologist named Philip Tetlock was at a meeting on American-Soviet relations. It was a blue-ribbon panel featuring some of the world's leading experts on the Cold War. The group's job was to make predictions about the superpower conflict, then in full swing, And what struck Tetlock was how many of the experts' predictions contradicted each other. Here they were, the world's foremost authorities on the subject, and yet they couldn't agree on anything, which meant logically that some significant number of them had to be wrong. Tetlock decided to test this idea. For the next 20 years, he immersed himself in the largest prediction study ever conducted. He gathered together experts from a wide variety of fields and had them answer questions within their area of expertise. So, of an energy specialist, he might ask, will the price of oil rise or fall in the next 12 months? Of an economist, he might ask, will interest rates be higher at the end of this year or lower? Is Quebec going to secede from the rest of Canada? Is the United Kingdom going to vote for or against Brexit? Tetlock ended up gathering an astonishing 82,000 predictions, and after tabulating his results, he came to a devastating conclusion. Experts were terrible at predictions. In most cases, anyone interested in any of those questions would have been just as well off flipping a coin. This is a sobering fact, particularly for those who are interested in owning the future. That circuitous path that humans take when they adapt and respond to innovation and change is really, really hard to predict. But Tetlock wasn't finished. After sorting through his data, he discovered that not everyone was bad at the future. A small group of people actually were really good at making predictions. And who were they? They were people who were open-minded, who were willing to change course when necessary and admit their mistakes. They were generalists, not specialists. They were people with the ability to look at a problem from a number of different perspectives. The expertise of good predictors, in other words, did not result in a dogmatic commitment to a particular worldview. It lay in curiosity and an endless sense of wonder about what the future might bring. You have in your hands a book written in that spirit. Enjoy. Malcolm Gladwell. Once there was a little boy who saw potential others could not see. I am abnormally driven to help you find your big idea, and I think I know where it all began. To fully explain, I need to tell you about a boy businessman, a nerd, and some stolen cheese. The original boy businessman was my father. He grew up in a poor immigrant family, living in a shoebox of a house that he shared with his parents and his two brothers. They didn't have much, but they always ate well because his mother was a cook. One day, at the innocent age of 8, the little guy was helping his mother stock up for supplies at the local grocer when some Kraft Philadelphia cream cheese caught his eye. When she looked away, he stuffed his mouth with the cheese. Shocked, she grabbed her son by the scruff of his neck and marched over to the storekeeper. Short for words, she exclaimed, "I caught this kid stealing!" It was a good time to forget he was her own son. As penance for his crime, the little boy was sentenced to a month of sweeping the floors of the grocery store. At the end of the first week, he noticed an overlooked opportunity. The grocer would throw away food that was good enough to eat, but allegedly not good-looking enough to sell. This problem of food waste plagues stores to this day. Even though he was just a boy, my father's first business idea was upon him. He agreed to continue sweeping the floors in exchange for the leftover food. He would then cart that food around to his poor neighbors, offering them deep discounts, much to their delight. Pretty soon, he was the first kid on the block with a leather jacket and a BB gun. He expanded his door-to-door delivery to all sorts of leftover items. This led to an entrepreneurial career full of ups and downs, where his key move was always to look for the potential in people and businesses that others overlooked. I told my dad's full-length story in my New York Times bestseller, Better and Faster, though I consistently reshare it to explain my mission. You see, in this example of the grocer, my dad imprinted one particular lesson on me forever. To be successful, you need more than just work. You need to find an overlooked opportunity. And then, the second boy businessman was born. Let's talk about me as a kid. While my awesome sweater and Coke bottle glasses might suggest that I was a cool kid, I was actually a nerd. I know you're probably thinking, Jeremy, you couldn't possibly have been a nerd. That's exactly what Drake looks like. But alas, I was a business idea nerd. I was always looking for what could be my next venture, which will play to your advantage by the end of this book. Following in my father's footsteps, I attempted to launch a dozen businesses and inventions, but nothing seemed like the right fit. Peanut butter company, carrot steamer, humidifier fan combo, lawn and garden, photographer, web design, 12-person painting company, book of inventions, Jeremy's junk, selling random overlooked stuff. This last little business probably had my parents alarmed. Imagine their son putting up posters that said, "Come check out Jeremy's junk." My dad figured I needed a new business idea, and he had a plan to help me. Every month, he would buy different genres of magazines, and we would flip to the sections that featured new inventions. "What do you think about this idea? What about this one? What parts would we need to build that? Can we go to garage sales to buy parts this weekend? How much will this cost us to make?" The hunt for ideas inspired me, but it also began to engulf me. I started to see opportunity everywhere, and I didn't know how to choose. Today, I think many of us are in the same boat. The act of getting inspired has become overwhelming. After a decade of searching, I became a corporate innovator, which is the field you end up in if you can't make a choice and just prefer hunting ideas. I figured I would learn how to hunt, research, test, and optimize using someone else's budget. Along the way, I hoped to stumble upon my breakthrough. I was so focused on learning to innovate to find my own idea that I inadvertently learned all the skills necessary to become very successful at a bank. By 28, I was one of Capital One's youngest directors and put in charge of innovation and running the company's struggling high-end business line. My team had a goal: to shrink new bookings by only 20%. How motivating. But with new innovation tactics and an obsession for new ideas, we launched a series of winning products. Instead of shrinking, we tripled monthly bookings and grew a $1 billion portfolio. My career in banking was set, but to me, this was actually irritating. I had proven I could find great ideas for other people, but in 20 years of searching, I hadn't found something to call my own. I was getting restless. I thought to myself, imagine if I could find my 12-year-old self and tell him, "You grow up to be a banker." There had to be another way. Most people expect innovative ideas to just magically happen. The truth is that you have to actively put in the effort. Let's create the future. In my desperate 2-decade search for an idea, I enrolled in an MBA program. I hoped the classroom would inspire my discovery, but then I sat through class after class, questioning my decision. What had I done? How would any of these courses help me be an entrepreneur? Then, something happened that changed my world. My marketing professor, Jay Handelman, said, "Today we're going to talk about the hunt for cool." My mind sparked awake. What was he talking about? We read Malcolm Gladwell's famous 1997 article, The Cool Hunt. The article spoke about how cool works and the entire profession of studying trends and culture to figure out what's next. I was blown away. How did I not know about this? Had I been working at a bank too long? I was inspired to turn my own relentless hunt into a hunt for cool. I realized I could teach myself to code and build a place online where people could share new ideas, trends, and innovations. I called it Trend Hunter, and it was one of the first crowd-sharing communities. Having said that, I didn't think Trend Hunter would become what it is today, the world's largest research platform with billions of views. My dreams were more simple because I was coding this site in 2005, before Facebook and YouTube were really developed. The idea of making something that could go viral wasn't as commonplace as it is today. Instead, I was inspired because I thought that someone, somewhere, might share an idea on Trend Hunter that would inspire my big idea. I didn't realize that Trend Hunter was the idea. I also failed to internalize that this new website was basically my childhood magazine scouring activity made digital. That means I never connected any of this inspiration to my father until my publisher pointed it out. My publisher asked me to interview my dad to better realize how his relentless search for ideas turned into mine. So I spent a weekend asking my father all the questions I'd never asked as a kid. 1 week after that interview, my dad had a heart attack and passed away. I was devastated. But when I look back, I realized that if I knew my dad was going to pass, I would have spent my last weekend interviewing him, which is exactly what I got to do. My dad saw the very beginnings of Trend Hunter, but he didn't get to see it grow. He would have been very proud to see what happened with my little project. In just a few years, our view count went from thousands to millions to billions. We started getting more traffic than almost every newspaper on the planet. As a research platform, there was nothing like it. Trend Hunter was 20 times faster at market research than anything I'd experienced running innovation at a bank. Using artificial intelligence, 150 million visitors, and a team of human researchers, we could do months of research in hours. We started crafting custom reports for brands, enabling them to innovate more efficiently and find better ideas faster. In 2009, I wanted to write an innovation manual to capture everything I'd learned in my professional hunt for ideas. Titled Exploiting Chaos, the book was the right title at the right time. The world started becoming very chaotic, and I was suddenly the chaos guru. I started getting invites from Fortune 500 CEOs who needed urgent help. A few big clients led to 50 more, then 100, then 200, and now around 700 brands. Today, Trend Hunter has grown into the largest trend firm and has become an innovation accelerator. We've been very fortunate to work on more than 10,000 custom projects and innovation workshops. We even got to help NASA prototype the journey to Mars. We have learned from each experience, and this book is the complete collection of everything we have learned and tried. I truly believe these battle-tested methods will help you realize your full potential faster. If you want more, sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Visit trendhunter.com or visit me at one of our epic future festivals. Enjoy the book. Jeremy. JeremyGutsche.com. Part 1. The Ability to Change. Many people will tell you that culture is the most important thing you need for innovation to happen. I used to be one of them. However, after working with 700 leadership teams and brands, I have come to a deeper realization. Whether you are an entrepreneur dreaming of your next idea, an ambitious hard worker, or a billionaire CEO, the most important trait you need for our fast-moving future is the ability to change. Master change, and you will be in a position to better spot new ideas, act on opportunity, and know how to convince others about your wonderful new vision. The key is to realize that your ability to change is hindered by 7 traps that all relate to your expertise. In many ways, these traps are like puzzles, because if you understand how they work, you can defeat them to your own advantage. We are more dependent on past decisions than we like to think. There are no horses in space, and yet you should expect that there are exactly 2 horses in space. And while we're on the topic, you should expect those horses to be 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide. Why? Because NASA's solid rocket boosters were designed using that exact width. Not coincidentally, but specifically because it's the exact width of 2 horses. If you truly want to understand NASA's choice, you have to go back to the Roman Empire. The Romans controlled the most land because they were able to patrol it with their 2-horse Roman war chariots. Those chariots would tear up the land, creating deep ruts. If you were a farmer driving your wagon, you might get caught in one of those ruts, resulting in a broken wheel. If you were a clever farmer, however, you would measure the width of the ruts and realize they were 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide, the width of the axles on the 2-horse Roman war chariot. You would then design your own wagon to match. Soon, all the wagons were made to be 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide. When the first railways were built, they were created specifically for mining carts pulled by horses. So, they made those railways 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide. Naturally, the first European trains extended those best practices with tracks that were 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?